Hey pen people, it's been a minute since I've made a video. My family got sick coming up on a month ago, and we are still working our way through that, and my voice still isn't 100%, so I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so it's been kind of a wild ride, and I haven't really been able to make any videos because I haven't had much of a voice. But I'm really excited for this video, not only to get back into the game, but to show you my newest pen. This is the Gravitas Entry with the Skittles finish, Rainbow Skittles finish. This is a pen that I have had my eye on for quite some time. About a year ago, I started seeing pen reviewers on YouTube review different Gravitas pens, and they really caught my eye. They meet a lot of the criteria I look for in a pen, so I was really excited. They were a bit out of my price range, but I saved my pennies. Then when I finally went to buy one, I added it to the cart, and I realized that because this is an Irish company and this is coming from Ireland, shipping is really expensive. So I was like, oh man, it's still out of my price range. Ben Walsh, the guy behind Gravitas Pens, was kind enough to negotiate with me and give me free shipping in exchange for an honest video review. So that's a little disclosure for you. I did buy the pen with my own money, but Ben Walsh was a little bit helpful in helping me get the pen here to me. So this is a really cool pen. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. We're gonna go over all of the cool pros of this pen. We're gonna go over some cons, because I do think that there are some cons. My experience with this pen has not been completely smooth sailing. Problems aside, this is a really cool pen. So we'll talk about all that stuff. I also wanna talk about some concerns I've heard other people raise about this pen, and I don't think that they're really that big of a deal, but I kinda wanna address those things as well and kind of give you my 2 cents on those things. So let's flip the camera around, take a closer look at this pen, and talk about all that stuff. Okay, so this is the packaging that the Gravitas Entry comes in, at least the Rainbow Skittles finish. You can see it's a very rainbowy package. It has these interesting markings on it. I believe, from what I've heard, that is an ancient Irish Celtic script. And this translates to the name of the company. And there's the logo of the company right there. And then it has this nice holographic sticker here. And the lid just pops off with a nice little, and there's the pen in there. It comes out. So this finish is really, really, really fun. We'll come back to the finish at various points in this video because there are some pros and cons here. It's got these pointy ends. The cap screws off. And one thing that really sets this apart from other pens, and really sets Gravitas off from other companies, is the weighted grip section. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that that's where Gravitas Pens got its name, is the grip section. So the pen cap and body of this pen are made from aluminum, but this is stainless steel, so it's much heavier. In fact, if I can unscrew this here, it takes a minute. This weighs more than this, like maybe a lot more. So what that does is it helps to make sure that the pen, even when you post the cap, doesn't get back weighted at all. So when you post it, you have this nice weight that kind of pulls the nib down to the page, which is nice because sometimes pens, they get back weighted and they kind of have the opposite thing. They kind of pull you away, but this kind of pushes you to the page, which is nice. And also, even though this is a metal grip section, it has these ribs, very, very fine ribs that gives it kind of a texture. So even though it's a metal grip section, it has some good grip to it. It's not as grippy as I expected. It's actually a little bit slick for me, but I don't mind it. I like it a lot. And then the nib here is a number 6 Jowo nib. Mine is a medium. And then it takes standard international cartridges and converters. It comes with both, which is nice. It's always nice to see a pen come with a converter. I guess when you start getting into this price range, I can't remember exactly how much the pen was, 70, 75 euros. You should probably expect to get a converter with it. So it's nice that it comes with that. One thing that is really interesting though is that you don't just get one cartridge of ink, you get 4, which is really cool. I think that's really generous of Ben to supply 4 ink cartridges. That can keep you going for a little while. So that's pretty nice. And they're not just, I don't have them on hand, unfortunately, but they're not just like some generic thing. It's not like he went and found the cheapest ink he could possibly find. They're Pelican ink cartridges, so they're actually name brand, which is pretty cool. Okay, so that's a basic overview of the pen. Okay, let's talk about some of the complaints or kind of quirks of this pen that other people have raised, or complaints that I can just anticipate that people are going to make about this pen. I don't think any of these things are a big deal, but let's talk about them anyway. So it's a pretty minimalist design. It's just cylindrical, round, there's no cap, there's no roll stop. And for some people, that's a deal breaker, not to have a cap or a roll stop. For me, I like the pen as it is because, especially with this skittle finish, it just lets you enjoy these beautiful colors without anything interrupting that. So I really do like this pen as it is. And as far as not having a roll stop, yeah, it can be a little bit annoying to have a cap that can roll away from you. But if that's going to be an issue for you, just hop on Etsy and buy one of my pen beds. So there's some shameless self-advertising for you. But just having something like this means that you don't have to worry about anything rolling away from you. So I don't think I would change it as far as roll stops and clips go. But Ben Walsh, if you check out his Instagram, you'll see he's always designing new things, trying new things. So if he ever does come out with a pen that has a clip on it, that would be exciting. Not just because clips can be nice, so you can carry your pen in your shirt pocket or whatever, but just because Ben comes out with so many unique and surprising and cool ideas that I'm sure he would have a very unique and interesting and refreshing take on a clip. So that would be really cool to see. But in the meantime, this is perfectly fine for me. Okay, so I want to end with the pros. There's a lot of nice things about this pen, so I don't want to end on a downer note. So let's go over the cons that I have found since getting this pen about a week ago. The first thing, I have never really seen anything super negative about Gravitas pens. All of the YouTubers rave about these pens, so I was kind of surprised when I pulled this out to see that the finish on this pen is not perfect. It has some blemishes, and I'm a very detail-oriented person. Things like that jump out at me right away and nag at me. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. It might be hard to see, so I think what I'm going to do is throw up a couple of photos. There's a little scratch on the cap right here, and then just a couple of dark spots, and a spot where the finish kind of warped a little bit, which actually looks kind of cool. But yeah, so the finish, as beautiful as it is, it's not quite perfect. I was a little bit disappointed with that, especially since this is a pen I paid much more than I usually pay for a pen. But at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. It's still a really nice pen, and it's still really, really pretty. Another thing, and this isn't anything bad about this pen in particular, but I want to point this out in case this bothers you. When I first got the pen, the threads were pretty rough, which I was surprised by because some YouTubers had talked about how easily this unscrews, and so I was looking forward to that in a screw cap. But it was really rough, but I decided to be patient with it because oftentimes with screw caps, at least with resin ones I found, they take some time to break in, and it was the same with this. After not that long really, it started to really smooth itself out, and now it's pretty smooth. Comes off and on really easily. Which reminds me, I'm getting ahead of myself. I forgot about a couple of the complaints that I've heard or could anticipate from other people. So when you uncap this pen, because of the ribs on here, those catch on the threading and the lip of the cap as you pull it off, and it can get pretty loud. I don't mind it at all. It does not bother me. It's actually kind of fun, I think. Kind of gives this pen character. But I could see if you were in a business meeting, or if you're a student wanting to take notes at school and you whip this out in the middle of the class and like go like this. You might have some people turning their heads wondering if somebody just pulled out a sword or something. So it's a little bit loud. So just keep that in mind. The other thing, and this isn't really a complaint so much as an observation people have made, is that these points, I've heard people say that they can be kind of sharp, but that's not my experience. They're definitely pointed. They're definitely pokey, but I would not call them sharp. It's not painful to push on them. I almost wonder if that's a more recent change. Maybe they used to be sharp and Ben Walsh decided to kind of smooth them out a little bit, but they're pretty smooth and I like how the ends of this pen are finished quite a bit. Okay, so that's it for stuff other people have talked about. Back to the cons I've noticed with this pen. So we talked about the threading, which is not a con, it's just normal, but just keep that in mind. We talked about the blemishes in the finish. Okay, one thing that's a little bit odd, and again, this is not a big deal, this is not a deal breaker, but I was surprised, and I don't think you'll be able to see this very well. Yeah, I can't angle that very well, but I was surprised to see that the inside of the pen body and the inside of the cap look pretty raw and unfinished, and there's actually, when I look in there, there's almost some like aluminum shavings or some kind of debris stuck in the bottom there. It just looks kind of rough inside. So obviously you're not going to be sitting there staring at the inside of your pen. That's not why you get a pen. But I was kind of surprised to see such a nice pen on the outside look kind of gritty on the inside. So not a deal breaker, but it surprised me. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a manufacturer of anything other than the occasional pen bed. But I don't know if this is possible, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more of a finished look. Obviously, you're not going to have it all rainbowy on the inside, but just have it be a little more polished and uniform on the inside would have been nice. Okay, now the big problem I had with this pen is that when I got it, it wrote great and then quickly burped on me. And then I was like, well, that's weird. Maybe I have the feed too primed up. Maybe there's too much ink in it, so I wiped it away. But then I opened up the pen and I noticed my ink was almost gone and I had just filled it. So like pretty much all of my ink had just gushed out onto the page, which is really weird. That's not supposed to happen. So I looked into it a little bit more, tinkered around with it. Pretty much the same thing started to happen. I started to notice it was writing very wet. I was losing a lot of ink and the cartridge or the converter was almost empty again very quickly. This is all happening within like a day or two. And it usually takes me quite a while to get through ink because I have multiple pens and I don't spend the whole day writing, even though I would love to. Anyway, so I was going through ink way faster than I should. And then I noticed the plastic nib housing was actually not flush with the pen. It was sticking out a millimeter, maybe half a millimeter. It was protruding above the grip section. And I was like, is it supposed to look that way? So I started looking at pictures on Instagram of other people's Gravitas pens, and I was like, yeah, pretty sure it's not supposed to be doing that. By the way, I was having conversations on Instagram with Ben Walsh about this. He's pretty responsive. But anyway, I wanted to take the nib out, take the nib housing out, make sure it was okay, put it back in correctly. And so I had never done that before. This is a Jowo nib, pretty standard Jowo nib housing and all that. So I had never done that before, but I looked at some tutorials, practiced on a different pen, and then decided, okay, I can take this housing out, this nib unit. Tried to unscrew it, and it would not budge. It would not budge at all. So Ben recommended just pulling the nib out and then getting the housing out from there. So I did that. I took the feed out, took the nib out, and then I still could not get the housing to budge. I had to put a letter opener in there and like screwdriver it out, and I had to use like pliers once I got it further. Anyway, it was a mess. I chewed up the housing. You can see, I don't know if it's going to show up here, but the housing is kind of scuffed up now. Fortunately, I didn't break anything. I was really worried I was going to break something because it was just ridiculously hard to get this nib unit out. And then I tried to put it back in, and it was the same thing. I tried my other Jowo nib unit that came with a different pen that comes in and out of that pen just fine, and it was very, very difficult again. So finally, I got it all the way in, and luckily didn't break anything. Now, I don't fault Ben Walsh or Gravitas Pens for this because no pen and really no product anywhere is going to have a defect rate of 0%. No matter what you do, no matter how good you are, there are going to be defects. And I have had some bad luck with getting defects. So I'm willing to give Gravitas Pens and Ben Walsh the benefit of the doubt here. And I'm willing to bet that if you go and buy this exact same pen, you will not have the same experience that I did. I think you'll have a much better experience. And luckily, the pen writes great now, and I'm enjoying it. Okay, so let's jump into all of the amazing pros about this pen, all of the really good stuff, because there is a lot of good stuff, and we've already talked about some of it, but I want to touch on a few more things. And then we'll do a quick writing sample, and we'll call it good. First thing, I got it with a medium nib, and it's a pretty nice nib. I've really enjoyed it. I haven't quite figured out exactly like where it stands as far as like its wetness goes. It's still kind of new to me. I've tried it with a few inks. I tried it with a Monteverde ink with the ITF treatment. It was kind of a gusher with that. And I've tried a couple other inks that feel a little bit more on the dry side. But overall, I've really enjoyed this nib. I don't know if Ben Walsh does anything to the Jowo nibs once he gets them, or if it's just your stock typical Jowo nib. Either way, it's been nice. It's also very comfortable. I really like what Ben has done with the grip section. As far as, the stainless steel, the ribs, all that is really cool. But just the shape of it is kind of nice too. Like see, there we go. That's a little easier to see now. So it flares out like a lot of grip sections do, but something about the shape is just subtly different from other pens. The way it curves in before flaring out, maybe, I'm not really sure, but it just looks a little different and it's hard to put my finger on, no pun intended. But it's pretty comfortable. I enjoy writing with this pen quite a bit. So that's really nice. We've talked about the finish. It's super pretty, super, super pretty. There are plenty of other finishes too that are a little bit more reserved, but also very, very pretty. Because it has a Jowo nib, that's something I really like about this. Not because I think Jowo nibs are the best nibs ever. I don't really have an opinion on what the best nib is, but Jowo nibs are probably, at least in the United States, they're probably the easiest nib to get a replacement for. There's so many companies that use Jowo nibs, and there's just, I don't know, Jowo nibs are everywhere. So if you accidentally drop this pen and break the nib or something, it's not that hard to get a new one. And that's what I really, really like. So many cool pens out there. It just seems like if you drop it nib down, it's the end of the world. But with this one, it's not that way. If you break it, even if you break the feed or something, like you can get a new one. So that's something I really, really like. Oh, I almost forgot to mention this. This is a really fun thing that Ben Walsh does with his pens that have the skittle finish. So he actually puts some scent in here. So when you open your pen, it actually smells like fruit candy. It's really interesting. And that scent, I've had this pen for almost a week now, and the scent has all but left the pen itself. It's still very much in here. I'm keeping this closed because I don't want that scent to go away. But it was kind of fun to have this scented pen that just smelled super pretty every time I got it out to write with it. So, and I'm sure if I were to store it in here, it would continue doing that. But anyway, it's just a fun touch. It's really fun, and I'm glad that Ben Walsh had the idea to do that because it's just really fun. So we've already talked about this, but it comes with a converter, comes with 4 cartridges, so that's super generous, really cool. We've talked about the minimal aspect of the design. I like that. There's just a lot to like. It's also very durable. Sometimes you hear a metal pen and it's like, oh, obviously a metal pen is going to be durable, but that has not been my experience. I have dropped and scratched my Pilot Metropolitans. I think I mentioned this in my longevity review about my Metropolitans, but I dropped a cap like this on concrete and it just bent the cap because the metal was so thin. And the metal in this, it's thin, but it seems to be quite a bit thicker than the Metropolitan. So if I were to drop this, I hope I never do, I don't think the risk of it denting is as great. So everything about the design of this pen just feels very robust, which is really one of the main reasons I got this. It's a nice pen, it's a good writer, it's a comfortable writer, and it's one that I think I'm going to be able to pass down to my grandkids. This pen's not going anywhere. So that's what I really, really like about this pen. Okay, now let's check out a writing sample really quick. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that's just a really easy way to support my channel and help it grow. Here's what we got. It's just a teeny little one this time. So, and it's another Mary Oliver quote. I think this might be the 3rd Mary Oliver quote I've done. I'm not sure, but I really like Mary Oliver. And I thought this was appropriate for Easter week. So it says, "Death comes before the rolling away of the stone." So, whether or not you're a Christian, I think it's powerful. It's definitely some Christian imagery there, but Mary Oliver, I don't think she was Christian, so I think it's something that we can hopefully all appreciate. So you probably know for Easter, Christians around the world are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so the rolling away of the stone is the door of his tomb coming open and Christ coming out alive. And again, whether or not you're Christian, I think that that's just a powerful image, a powerful metaphor. And I think that the way that Mary Oliver has phrased this, even though it's such a small quote, I think it's really powerful to think about how things might be really bad right now, but they can get better. And I think that's especially important right now with how crazy the world is. We're still dealing with a lingering pandemic. We're dealing with this crazy, ridiculous war in Ukraine. So much crazy stuff going on. So I think right now, I think this is a good message to remember that death comes before the rolling away of the stone. Things do get better. There is renewal and healing that can happen, as symbolized by Easter and spring and Christ and all of that. So, yeah, I just found this to be a really hopeful and relevant and timely quote for right now. So I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.